One. Welcome back to the Weekend Ball podcast. I am Alex Adams, live here in Jakarta, Indonesia, covering Team Canada at the FIBA World Cup. Canada is just coming off a heartbreaking defeat versus Brazil. I'm joined by the one and only Baraheni of SDPN Sports. A great follow, everyone. You should check out his work. We obviously did a postcast of sorts after Canada destroyed France, and I think this is going to be the exact 180 in terms of how we feel about this game and everything. But thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope everybody can hear me
Mhm.
at home. I'm honestly, you're right. It is kind of the exact opposite reaction we had to France because France was such a stunning upset from the Canadian perspective. And now from Brazil's perspective, this is another stunning upset. I think if you look back at, before this game and how they looked, how Canada really looked going into this contest. They were adjusting really well to their teams. Any team that was facing them, they were adjusting to their style. You look at Latvia, the way they were switching in the second half, they really adjusted their scheme to kind of match what Latvia was doing offensively. You think of France and the way that they tried to essentially double down on size. They made it really uncomfortable for them on the perimeter with guys like Evan Fournier and them struggling. But in this game, Brazil completely dictated the pace and style of this game from the beginning. They grinded it to a halt. It was a very, very slow, methodical pace. It was exactly how they wanted to play. And Canada was really never able to get out in transition, never able to score easily, and it showed in the results. I mean, they struggled on all fronts, and it really showed some of the flaws of this Canadian roster.
Yeah, I mean,
It's frustrating.
I'm just trying to find out what the transition points were, or points in transition. Last time I remember checking it was that it was maybe 7 points at half. So they had
Yeah,
9 points fast break points. There you
so
go.
Brazil had 17 points off turnovers. Canada had four, and
Yeah.
then fast break points was 9-6. It's just, yeah, not very good.
No, and obviously Dylan Brooks was in foul trouble throughout the game. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
Although I wouldn't have said his defense after maybe the first quarter or so was that great. Yago at the end of the game, Yago Santos made a layup that just kind of blew by him, and it wasn't necessarily off anything special.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm a bit at loss for words after this game. And also just seeing the way the draw is, it really opened up in terms of there was a chance Canada, by punching their ticket, would make the Olympics.
Yeah.
And now with this loss, now it's win or go home. And if they lose, they're not going to Paris, at least not until an Olympic qualifying tournament, which we always know is fun for Canadian fans. Um, so I don't even know what to say. It's
Yeah, I,
been
I think I think like, man, to your point, they've put themselves in a really impossible position. This was looking, I mean, even as far as after the first half when they were up 10 points, like you could see, some people on the timeline, including myself, were wondering, all right, so is it going to be Germany or Slovenia? Like, who is it that they're going to be playing in that second round? And now the case has completely flipped. They were very, very close to qualifying for the Olympics. They wouldn't have been able to qualify today, but that they
no,
would have position themselves in an incredible way to essentially secure themselves a spot in the Olympics and in the next round of this tournament. Now it's like you said, it's do or die, and it's also against an incredible Spanish team. Like, this is the number one team in the world. They are still a powerhouse. They have tons of talent on there. And just because, Latvia beat them today and you've beat Spain once doesn't mean necessarily that you can
no.
go in there overly confident. This is a Spanish team that is very, very well versed. And, I think this game kind of shows you a way to expose Canada. And if the outside shot isn't falling, they shot 27% from three today. I think I have it here, but Nikhil Alexander Walker, 1 of 8 after being incredible from behind the line
I think
throughout
he
this
made the
tournament.
first shot of the game. I believe he made his
Yeah,
first shot and then missed a bunch of open ones. He hit one off the backboard that
yeah,
Arash
that
and
was
I were
yeah, that was
like
very ugly.
laughing about a little bit. It was just, I mean, it
Two of
really,
seven.
it felt
SGA. I mean, like all of these guys, right? Yeah.
it felt like Venezuela all over again. Maybe different, just the atmosphere and the way they did it, because I thought Brazil really did it through being much bigger. Obviously, they got Powell in foul trouble, and him being fouled out, I think, was almost, I don't want to say the death nail, but it had a huge impact just because Canada had no one to clean up on the boards, and Brazil had a bunch of second chance opportunities at the end of the game. Right, it
Yeah.
wasn't Brazil couldn't shoot either. I think let me check. It wasn't 19% from three. They shot just, yeah, 19% from three. So Canada defensively, especially just on with like before rebounds, basically on the first chance, were fine. It was really closing out possessions that they weren't so good. I thought RJ Barrett was just invisible, and I think some of that was really due to the fact that it seems as though there's a trend here that when there is um a big man like Bruno or Gobert, that he can't get to the rim, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no, I think you're head on. And look, the Brazilians, they essentially packed the paint. It not only made it tough for guys like RJ and Dylan Brooks, guys who are trying to get downhill a lot, but it also made it tough for SGA. I think he really had to settle for a lot of shots, especially towards the end of the game. He was taking a lot more threes. He was taking a lot more step. He took that step back jumper, which
Mm-hmm.
was kind of advised, in my opinion. It was just bad shot selection in that moment. And it's because all game the paint has just been packed for him. He hasn't been able to operate as he usually would. So it's become like that. That now is the game plan when you're going ahead and trying to beat Canada. You don't have that perimeter shooting that you can rely on consistently. And at the same time, Dwight Powell got in foul trouble, and the Canadians lost their size advantage as well. And Brazil was just able to beat up on them in the interior. It just that's the way the game goes, and internationally, at least a little bit. When there's one point of weakness, they can really point that out. And obviously, it happened today.
It felt like a culmination of all the worries Canadian fans have had going into the World Cup, in terms of the offense became just absolutely halted and stagnant. It was all one-on-one, no passing. If they
Yeah.
weren't getting in transition, they couldn't score, which they couldn't score in this game, right? They only scored 65 points. They had no shooting from the perimeter. They had pretty good looks, for not great looks, but they had enough good looks to that they should have shot better than, what was it, 29% or 27%. So they got killed on the glass. When Powell went out, they had no real big. And it became just a one-on-one show on offense. And Brazil didn't shoot that well, as we mentioned, and they still were able to just muck it up. And FIBA officiating, I'm not going to complain in terms of just, I think Canada's played so poorly that the refs weren't necessarily the defining factor. I wouldn't say that. But man, I remember in the first
No,
quarter,
no,
just
yeah.
Shea would just get whacked and hacked, and there was no call. And it's like
Mhm.
in the NBA, that even in a playoff game, even in a game 7 setting, that is called, those kind of calls are made the majority of the time. And just because
Yeah.
FIBA, the way FIBA is, and the refereeing, and they let more things go, it's just a bit different.
No, I hear you. It was a physical game. Like it was a really, really physical game, and I think some of the advantages went Brazil's way. It's tough to look back at this game and say this was the main reason. That was the
No,
main
no,
reason.
no, not at all. No, no, no.
Yeah, I think it was like you said. It's everything that could have went wrong for Canada went wrong in this game. And it reared its head in a really, really bad way in maybe one of the more important games of the tournament, because now, like you said, man, it's do or die against Spain. And when you look forward to Spain, the Hernan Gomez brothers. They obviously have a litany of guards that are just incredible. Rudy Fernandez, who hit a big, big shot today. You kind of spoiled it for me. Thank you very much, by the
I'm sorry
way.
about that. Yeah,
No, it's
on
all
Twitter, I
it's,
because I'm like 40 seconds ahead of the broadcast. So whenever I
it's
tweet
all good.
something, I tweeted, or I think I forget how it went, but I basically definitely ruined it for you. So I
No,
apologize.
it's all. I'm just playing around, but no, I think like in general, you can see that they've put themselves in a really tough position against a good team, and I don't know how they're going to figure this out. I think this is the type of loss that either you rally the troops and it kind of helps you bounce back in a major way, or you are completely defeated and
Yeah.
that's the end of the road. And like from Jordi Fernandez's press conference, you can kind of hear his own anger with his team, right? Like he called out pretty much everybody
Yeah.
in that press conference, and it was tough, man, tough.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna be a glass half full, and I will to some extent because I've been glass half empty this whole time. Um, every time Canada's had this type of game in the past, I don't know, in 2015 and 2016, not really, but 2021, um, they were out. They're done. They lose to Venezuela, they lose to the Czech Republic, and they're out. Goodbye,
Mhm.
making the Olympics. They have another chance at it now. It's, as you mentioned, a tough test. It's Spain. This isn't Spain of 2012 or 20, even 16, even maybe 19, right? It's not the same team. They look pretty fragile um
Yeah.
against Latvia, who honestly could have won by more, I think, if their point guard didn't get hurt and miss some of the second quarter and then get in foul trouble. So for Latvia Zaggers, or so they definitely should win that game. They have the talent, but look at what happened today, right? Spain will be very smart, which is the biggest worry, is that they'll see what happened with Brazil and say, okay, well, there's our game plan, right?
Yeah,
Now
yeah, exactly.
I don't think they have the same athleticism in the interior. Like even Garuba is a bit undersized, and
Hmm.
that will, in my mind, really help RJ get to the rim a little bit, because Bruno and Suarez and Santos, G Santos, were just swarming him and long athletic, and Spain doesn't
Yeah.
have that type of athleticism. So and think about it, they lost the game by 4 points, and RJ Barrett had what, 1 point. If he goes, oh no, he had 4 points because he made a three at the end. But if he does decently well at um just in this game, and makes a couple shots, they probably win it, right? And that's not too much to ask. Now I
Yeah.
think Spain's a much tougher competition, and so we'll see. But it just sucks that if they had just won this, eke this game out by 2 points, by 10 points, which they're up 10 at half, then they're fine. And it's just if they had been trailing the whole time and it felt more like the Latvia game until half, I think I would have felt I could sit with it a bit easier. But because of the fact that they had
They
it,
have to
they
win that.
had it,
Yeah.
they completely
Yeah.
had it. And I don't know why Shea went so ISO so much and not attacking the rim as much. I was a bit peculiar by that. He settled a lot, which
I think that was purely just what with the size of Brazil and the fact that they were packing the paint, and after a while, the Canadian like Nah and RJ and all those guys, they just weren't hitting their shots. And once that happens through the progression of a game through four quarters, the defense
yeah,
starts to shrink a little bit, right? And they can pack the paint a little bit more, and that makes it makes it tough for a guy like Shea to operate, who's so much he's living in the paint. He's trying to do that. That's why even in OKC, right? Like they need shooters around Shea to be able to operate so he can have as much space as possible. The same thing applies on the Canadian team. For him to be at his best, you need to have guys who are knocking down their shots. And they weren't doing that today,
yeah,
and it made it so much harder for him. That's why he was settling so much in the fourth
yeah,
quarter. Like a
yeah.
lot of step backs, a lot of mid range jumpers, et cetera, et cetera. He just couldn't get to the rim as much as he wanted to.
And it was a bit unfortunate. I don't really know why they didn't really go to him in those last minute and a half. Like RJ took a dumb shot. Dort obviously had the shot clock violation and went in, but it was too late. And that possession was okay, but they just passed up a lot of open shots as they got the defense rotating, because they're afraid to shoot, because they just weren't excellent shooters, or and because they hadn't been making those shots earlier in the game. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just been, I really think this is Canada basketball, and this men's teams has had moments in time where they've had to face the music, and every time they haven't been able to face the music. This is a game where you think, okay, okay, this is it. This is it. And against Spain, that will be the time for this team. For people that don't know, if Canada does lose, their chances at making the Olympics automatically is out, because they lost to Brazil. And if Brazil loses, I
Mm-hmm.
believe I could be mistaken, but what I'm hearing and what I've checked out, it seems to be the case that Brazil has the tiebreaker now. So it's a double blow for the
Yeah,
Olympics.
so we confirm. I actually confirmed that. A
Okay.
couple people online have confirmed that. So yes, it is just essentially you win, you move on in the tournament. You also potentially qualify for the Olympics, depending on Dominican. and Puerto Rico. But
Yeah,
yeah, overall, you like if they lose this game, they do not qualify for the Olympics. There's no chance for them to qualify for the Olympics through
yeah,
this tournament.
and they're out
Obviously,
of the tournament and everything. There's no tie break rules, which a part of me likes, but a part of me is just like if they could have just freaking won this game, then we wouldn't have to do this. But
so the tough thing is like Spain also
it's the
has to
same.
win.
Well, the interesting thing is just for people that don't know is in the other bracket or on the other game, Latvia, Brazil, every team's 3-1. So it's a
Yeah,
win. It's a game 7 environment for both those two games. So I'm gonna get there early. I'm gonna be watching both live. I'm really excited. Um, and you should be cheering for Latvia just because of the Olympics. And that game will be earlier, so we'll know if Canada uh
yeah,
most likely by the end, like midway through Canada's game, they'll know if there's a chance that they can punch their ticket to the Olympics or if it's going to
yeah.
be a long road ahead. Either way, um, what yeah, I was a loss of words at the first game when we did France, and I'm the same thing right now. I was on Twitter and said I hate being a fan, and people were like, "Well, you're supposed to be a journalist." I'm like, I'm a fan of the program. Okay, I've followed this team for so long. Just let me it's just frustrating. But
It's look, man.
go for it.
You're just like I'll say this. Never take the fan out of you. It's
Yeah,
hard to, and like it. You're still super young. You're like getting into this or at a very early age, but like, um, a lot of people have said that to me too about like, hey, and yeah, to a certain extent, you do have to be objective and you have to call a
yeah,
spade, but that doesn't stop you from being disappointed or being,
and
at
just
the end of the day, you're Canadian, Alex.
yeah,
That
yeah,
is
no, no, and I care about the program, and if you talk to people like Dan Schulman, and who literally has, I'm gonna have him on, this morning, Jakarta time, 5:30. So I'm grinding for you guys, but just he literally has an out in his contract that says if Canada makes the Olympics, I'm going to wherever and I'm calling the games. Like that's like, and he's a journalist. Well, he's like a broadcaster, but that's the like he cares about the program. Like he wants Canada to
yeah,
win, right? So
yeah.
and that's not me. I'm completely agreeing with that. So and it's not just like a little tidbit. Like I interviewed Jordy. I it I tried to kind of get him to open up and get him to, but he's very serious and I have to ask him tough questions about Lou Dort. I'm sure he was annoyed that I had to ask him about his availability the past, three,
Yeah.
4 days. And so just on the fan thing, it's not as though I say, oh, well, I don't want to help out Brazil by asking questions that
No,
are meaningful.
exactly. Yeah.
I know you weren't saying that, but I just mean to anyone who maybe doubts my journalism status and everything. But I don't myself. But
Your journalistic integrity. Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
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 But it's been yeah, it's been awesome. But the interesting thing with Jordy Fernandez, I thought he had a bad coaching performance. I don't think he did. I mean, I'm not saying I don't think it was his fault, right? If Nikhil makes 3 of 8, they probably win. If RJ Barrett shoots better than whatever, I don't even know, one of something like
Yeah.
the France game, they win.
I
So
think,
it's not his fault, but they had
yeah.
stretches where I think Jonathan Chen talked about they need to call timeout in the third quarter. I agree. He didn't stop the run. I love that. I never understand why coaches in the NBA, I don't know how you feel, don't take a timeout when a team's on a run. It just why not? Like it's not
Yeah.
I don't
No, I agree with you. I agree. I'm of the opinion that like as soon as a team you're on a run and as soon as a team scores on you and they've maybe feel good about themselves a little bit, you see them cheering a little bit on the sideline. I'm of the opinion you call a timeout right there. I agree. I think some of the timeout game, and this is like him learning as a head coach also, to be
Mhm.
fair, to be completely fair to him, like he's also trying to figure out what his style is as a head coach and what he can do. But I agree with you. I think in that third quarter, there were times where things both looked lethargic for the Canadians, and it also looked like Brazil was trying to figure things out. In that moment, you have to call a timeout to try to maybe reset your group. And yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah. And I thought yeah, I wouldn't have said he had a poor performance, but I just thought he didn't feel the right, he didn't touch, what is it? Push the right buttons. There you go. Touch. Push the right buttons in this game. And he really has in every other game, right? The way they played. We were searching for answers to like, how can this team get better? What have you learned? Right? Because it had been perfect performances. And again, glass half full is that this team hasn't had any real adversity, and now it's here, right? And
Right.
I don't, like, even if they lose to Spain, I can't imagine they play worse than that they played today, right? They
Mhm.
didn't make any shots, nothing was going. The refereeing was a bit questionable. They got in foul trouble. Now there's
Yeah, I'm
some
not gonna
things
lie to
that,
you. I don't think it matters anymore. Like, I mean, even
yeah.
if they play an incredible game against Spain and they somehow lose, like that exhibition game that they went to overtime in, right?
Mhm.
They played a great game. And
Yeah.
if it's the same thing, but let's say Canada loses on Sunday, I don't think people are going to be looking at it and say, "Wow, it was a great valiant effort." I think they will
No,
say
no, no,
the
no, no.
complete missed opportunity. You
No,
know?
no, no. I that wasn't my point. My point was more that against Spain, they can't. I don't see them playing as bad as they did
You're
today,
right. Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and so just like it's gonna have some sort of rebound. I just can't imagine they shoot this poorly. Maybe I'm wrong, but just if you look at all the other games they've had, it felt as though it was a
Oh, you're
perfect
right.
storm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a perfect storm,
yeah,
and again, as I said, the fact that they're still alive today is nice. But at the same time, what a missed opportunity. And it's just the way this program's been, really. Like I don't want to put it in too much in context, but and the history of it, because at the same time it's a very different group. Other than Dwight Powell and Kelly Olynyk, no one was there in 2015. Or I guess Phil Scrubb was, so three of them. But 2021 there was RJ, Lou, those guys, but Nikhil, Dwight, but it's not the same core. But this
hmm
program's had a problem of when it gets tough and it gets muddied, how do they score? And you felt as though, and I'm sure most Canadian fans felt, okay, we have SGA, that's different. We never had a guy of that quality since Steve Nash. Even as good as Wiggins was, he was never that good. And even in 2021 when he had that crazy comeback and then they lost. Um, but
yeah,
it even happened to him, right? And maybe his lack of 3-point
yeah,
prowess really came back to haunt him. I'm not saying I don't I wouldn't have put this game I wouldn't put the blame on Shea today for this loss, but um it it that's maybe why Luka Doncic is a bit better, just a bit better of a playmaker, a bit better, and that's a different debate. But it just, I don't know. What do you want to add? I feel like I'm going in circles of just this whole program and the
No, no, no.
team and
I mean, yeah. It's hard not to feel defeatist in this moment just because of how important it is for Canada basketball. The momentum that they were building in this tournament, it really felt like they were turning a corner.
Mhm.
And when it feels like that, you feel like nothing can ever go wrong. And there's this saying, I don't know if it's actually a saying, but I've seen it said in The Witcher, so I'm going to say it. A plan is a plan until you get punched in your mouth. I
Yeah,
don't
I've
know if
seen
that
that. I've heard that before, or punch in the face or whatever. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
heard that.
punch.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly what Canada is dealing with right now. They had a plan, they executed it to perfection through the first three games, and then they got punched in the mouth against Brazil. And now their backs against the wall. They've got the 10 count, if you will, if we're going on punching in the face terminology. So now they gotta deal with it. Like this is the situation they've put themselves in. It is going to be interesting to see how this group responds because that is what makes a team and that is what makes the foundation of a team. It's seeing like, yeah, when things are going swell and everything is going right, people are answering great post game pressers, people are making Alana Morissette references, all that stuff is great when you're winning. When you're losing, how are you going to respond?
What's interesting is every time Canada's had that loss, it's never been when we expected it, right? I was on the radio and I thought I literally said, like, I think they should win. You never know, but they should win heavily and easily. And I mean, if they play half decent, I think that happens. Against
Yeah.
Venezuela, they had blown through that tournament other than losing to Argentina, and no one expected them to lose. They lost. They played the Czech Republic. No one expected them to lose, and they lost. They played Brazil today, and they just came off these huge blows that no one expected them to lose, and they lost. but this time they have a second chance. And what's going to be interesting is it's going to be for all the diehards who listen to this, and then maybe people who are just realizing, oh wow, Canada plays in a big basketball games with Shea and RJ and whoever, is that this is the first game I think in this program's history where it feels okay. This is the inflection point. It's clear, right? Like we always knew it again in those semifinals that they lost, but it wasn't. It didn't feel that way. And to play the number one team in the world to make it not to the Olympics necessarily, but to essentially put your flag and stomp it into a really good chance of making the Olympics and going higher in the rankings and just going finally deep to a quarterfinals at a FIBA World Cup. Um, there's going to be a lot of pressure, and this team, it felt as though they just knew how to handle it. And this one game, it didn't. It went. Everything went wrong. So, um, I know it's going to be
I'm really curious to see how the vibes at practice are going to be tomorrow. I'm very curious to see how the vibe,
Oh, I'm
because
sure.
you guys obviously go out and record time there. I'm just curious to see how the vibes are going to be tomorrow in practice.
Going on what Lou Dort was expressing himself, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean just the consternation and the, you know, there wasn't a lot of levity in the press conference today, and Jordy Fernandez as well. Basically, I put out a tweet that, and I didn't misstate, I just didn't miss tweet him necessarily, but people have griping about if I took it out of context. But he did basically say like Shea wasn't good enough. He didn't make the way he should. He talked about everyone basically on the team being bad. And so he's now going out on a limb and putting his flag and kind of openly criticizing his players. And we saw that in the way he approached that huddle, the infamous one. I think you tweeted it out of against Latvia. And it's going to be an interesting just for the Jordy Fernandez fan club, who I was asked today on radio, like, is he going to the NBA? Right? Is that his next destination?
Yeah.
If they win this is obviously a blow. I don't think it's a nail in the coffin, but if they lose this next game, will we think back, okay, maybe he shouldn't have been as harsh in a way to this team, or just maybe as publicly. I mean, it's hard to judge with in the huddle, like he is coaching, to be fair, but just it's going to be as much kind of decision making performance for the coach, for the players, for Mike Bartlett, for Rowan Barrett, for how they brought this team together. They said no to NBA guys. To Leonard Miller would have wanted to be on this team. A couple other people. Now, I'm not saying Leonard Miller's the reason why they make or don't make the World Cup, but they did.
Leonard Miller could have helped. I'm not gonna lie to you. In this situation, Leonard Miller could have helped.
Maybe, but I believe they said no to Shaden Sharp, but I'm not as sure about that. But I know he was interested. Who's obviously amazing skill set. Maybe not ready for prime time right now in a FIBA setting, but it's just gonna be like I can't. It's
Yeah,
just
I mean,
yeah.
I agree with you, man. Look, I like you. It's it's very easy right now and like, man, even me, I'm thinking of all the mishaps and could haves and should haves of this entire situation. You think of Jamal Murray not being here, you think of guys like Andrew Wiggins, you think of even the Trey Lyles, the Chris Bouchers, the Andrew Nembards, what this team could have been and how they could have potentially helped this current roster. But it's hard to say that. It's easier to say that in hindsight. It's very hard to look at that, when things are going great,
Mm-hmm.
when they're beating France and they're about to 30 one of the best teams in the entire world, that it looks different. I think, this was, I don't want to say it was an outlier, but it was
I
very much so an assessment of how bad things can get for you.
mhm.
And now that you know that, how are you going to work tirelessly to avoid ever getting to that point again?
It's a wake up call. Like that's what it is. It's just they got like and it's hard not to, like, as an athlete. That's one of the hardest things, is to stay on the top and to be consistent when things are going well, because complacency can really set in, right? Especially if it's a one game environment where anything can really happen, and that's just human. And so this game against Spain will be really interesting, because I think my head's telling me they should still win. They should win that game. That, like, I watched the Spanish team they did not look that great against Latvia. Now there was a crowd and everything. I watched them a bit against Cote d'Ivoire. They looked good, fine. They but this is not the Spain of, as I mentioned before. Like, they should win this game. But Spain is crafty. They're smart. They have
They
Sergio
should have
Scario.
beat Brazil,
They
but
should
they
have beat
should have.
Brazil. Exactly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it will go. I mean, we don't know. We're not Nostradamus. We can't see into the future, but um, it's just gonna be such an important game for this program. It's gonna be impactful for just the men's program, and if it's another Olympic qualifier, like, God, just help us. I don't know
Yeah.
what's gonna happen, and I hope they could bring it back to Canada somehow and get the funds so that there's a real one with fans, because that would be awesome. And I'm sure you'd be able to get guys, like a lot of guys, to come to Canada. But what a 360 from 3 hours ago, where I'm talking to people within Canada basketball, and we're talking about how we normally we'd be nervous, but we're not, and it should be a walk in the park in Manila, and that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And like, I gotta, and Arash too, thought it would be a walk in the park, and I thought so at halftime, and I was really nervous before the France game. I don't know what I'm gonna be like before this game, because I just care so much about the basketball in this country, the program, and if they lose, just what a culmination of basically 48 hours from the complete highs of beating Latvia and France to the doldrums of this program for forever and ever, it feels like. I don't like, is there anything else you want to touch on? I feel we've been going a bit in loops and
No,
loops, but
no, no, no,
yeah.
no. I think we have been as defeatist and
Okay,
as we can.
let's go. Go.
Yeah, I'll be a little bit positive. Look, you're right. I think they have shown how versatile they can be in terms of beating teams. I think they showed their inherent flaws as a roster. And I think objectively, adversity is good for a team like this. They were cruising through things, and maybe this is the thing they needed to not only advance in this tournament, but to potentially win this
Yeah.
tournament. Again, it goes, and this is like my complete glass half full approach to it. But if you're looking at this team, the talent, what they've shown so far through the first three games of round one, and now this game, they showed that they can deal with a little bit of adversity. The Latvia game, they showed they can deal with adversity. Brazil, obviously, they got punched in the mouth. How are they going to respond? That's the key thing. If you're trying to be as positive as possible, it's, hey, they still have an opportunity to win. They have shown that they can beat this Spanish team, and they've shown that outside of this game, they are maybe one of the best teams in this entire tournament. How they can do that, can they show that? That's going to be the biggest question on Sunday. That's as positive as I can get, dude. I'm sorry.
No. And the one thing I will say is this team has been notoriously poor at starting games, and
Yeah.
that's been their Achilles heel. And if, let's say, they start the game on a 10-2 run, I'm gonna be like, okay, like that's a good start. That's what they finally needed. And I've been asking coach about it, and they talk about it, but until you really, yeah, it's just gonna be a game 7 environment, which I've never been to a game 7 in basketball, so I think I'm gonna basically be at one, at least maybe not with the fans, but in terms of just the intensity of both rosters. And
Mhm.
what, just to lay it out a bit for everyone at home, because it's actually turned out that the second round is going to be absolutely ridiculous on Sunday. Because if, for people that don't know, is I did mention that Latvia and Brazil are 3-1. In the other group that Canadian fans are looking at, with Dominican and Puerto Rico, who could get those Olympic spots, they're all 3-1. Dominican lost to Puerto Rico, and Italy beat Serbia. So they're going to have the same thing where it's a decision day. So there's a chance Canada, when I'm done this in like in 2 days from now, they've qualified for the Olympics. There's like a realistic chance. At the same time, there's a realistic chance that Canada's out and gone. So I think we'll leave it at that. Let's hope that Nikhil starts shooting well, that RJ starts to score. Shea was okay, but definitely could have been better. There's no foul trouble. And in the end, they should win their game. They should, but they should have beat Brazil. So I don't know. I think that's the best way to leave it. Is there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and we'll find out on Sunday morning and Sunday night here and live in Jakarta.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Regardless,
And
appreciate you.
just yeah. Anyways, I want to give you the floor just because I always do. Is there anything at SDPN or anything you're coming out with that you want to plug? Because I will say that, and this is a bit segue to the podcast, but just the infectious enthusiasm you bring to basketball. I remember you tweeted, I think it was the day after training camp or something, but you just said like how much I love writing about basketball or something. Do you remember
Yeah,
that
yeah,
tweet?
yeah.
So if anyone doesn't check out S's work at SCPN, they definitely should. You have the Leap podcast, is that it? And then you
Yeah,
have
no.
your
So we did it. We did an off-season series titled "The Leap," but the Objective Basketball Podcast, which is the regular podcast that we do for the NBA, that should be coming up in the next couple of weeks here. And then I have a bunch of season previews for the NBA. If your Canadian basketball fans are interested, we're going to be doing season previews for all 30 teams. That'll be on
I,
SDP's YouTube channel, man.
I want to deep dive on Dennis Schroeder. Okay. That's
It
my
might-
maybe. Okay, great.
Yeah,
That's
maybe.
maybe we'll
It's in. It probably look. I'm going to be covering the Raptors a lot more this season. Fingers crossed. So, definitely a lot more Raptors stuff this year for sure.
awesome. Well, as a Raptors fan myself, definitely excited to check out your stuff, and I love your work and your knowledge of the game, the X's and O's is unmatched. So thanks again, S, for doing this, and hopefully I have you on in like a week, and we're talking about how Canada did something special. And if
Hopefully.
not, we'll have a 30-minute pod of us crying.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah. Okay, thanks, S. I really appreciate it, and thanks again for doing this. You're always the best.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.